It's SJG D2 HBCU football.
Sleep on Livingstone if you want to, and they can really punish you for it.
Fayetteville State, they're never sexy, but they won.
Sometimes we have to eat our crow, and I got to eat my crow this week, okay?
Doom alert. Yeah, we're back at Heartbreak Hotel, and we're checking back in.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to the HBCU Gameday D2 Football Show. Do apologize for getting a little bit late of a start, but appreciate you guys for tuning in. Guys, it is finally here, and I say that somewhat jubilantly, but somewhat sadly. We are now at the point of the season where most of our teams in D2 HBCU football, they're getting prepared for 2025. There's only a handful of folks, whether they are in the championship race or with those slim hopes of Division II playoffs in mind. But for the most part, our family, our D2 HBCU family for the year has gotten just a little bit smaller. But we got two great championship games in both the CIAA and the SIAC. And, it has just been a joy for myself and Chris, who will be hopping on shortly to again, for this second year, hop on and talk about Division II HBCU football. My comrade in arms is en route, but, again, we like to make sure we put some thought and intentionality into everything that we do. So please, guys, make sure that you hit that like button. We're actually today just on Facebook and YouTube. As far as the X platform, we're not doing that today. But again, appreciate everybody for hopping on. I will show you guys my shirt I brought for you guys. I paused my game to be here, and this is true. This is actual and factual. But yeah, man, what a week of HBCU football that we had at the Division II level last week. We saw a little bit of it all, and we had some takes, and some of them sounded good at the time and sounded plausible. But then, chaos reigned supreme, and just as an example of some of the chaos that we saw, we'll see a little bit of it here. We'll see a little bit of it here.
Yard deep.
Oh my goodness! Why in the world would we do that? Why?
And flags, and now players are going.
Why? Why in the world would we do that?
And we have a semi-brawl going on the football field.
Oh, I tell you, this team is sometimes the most frustrating team I've ever witnessed in my life. We've got everything in front of us. We just took the lead back. The first thing we do, the young man from Fayetteville State ran out of bounds, gave himself up. What do? We go grab him and fling him to the ground, out of bounds, in front of the referee. After we get a good kick, they would have been inside the 15-yard line, Ken.
And now it's going to come out to at least a 25. With
why
players going at it down there, I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see some ejections now.
Yeah, and that was kind of an extreme example, but a little bit of an example of the type of chaos that we saw in Division II HBCU football last week. It was the week before the championship week again, and also it was rivalry week. So in the SIAC and the CIAA, folks lined up for rivalry games. It's the end of the season. Some folks are still playing for a bid to the championship game. Some folks are playing for hopefully playoffs or other postseason possibilities. And other folks are just playing for pride or just playing because they don't necessarily like the people that are in front of them in those uniforms. And so we had a lot of that in both the CIAA and the SIAC. We had some upsets. Yes, VSU did beat VUU. We did have some conversation about that last week. And Chris and I will hopefully be on to talk about the commentary that we had there. So, but things got started. Let's start off things and keep the flow that we've always kept all year, which is starting off with our friends over in the SIAC. So if you remember last week we did a lot of talking about potential championship scenarios as well as scenarios for the playoffs. And so, one of the scenarios over in the SIAC, And really the story of the year, I think, in Division II HBCU football for sure has been Clark Atlanta University. You know what they've been a perennial punching bag over there, the SIAC. You know, they have one championship since the clock turned 1990, and that was a 5-way split back in 1991. And so, you know, needless to say, they haven't had a lot of success. Last year, even they were 0-10. But last year around this time, I got some information, some intel, you know, that said that Clark Atlanta was looking to hire Teddy Keaton. Teddy Keaton had just led Allen University to a 7-3 record, which was a major accomplishment considering that this program didn't even exist a decade ago. And so because of that, we were able to, you know, there was some intrigue as to how he would do over in the AUC. Again, this is a school that has never had a lot of history of being a successful football program. Well, you know what, guys? In just 1 year, he has turned this thing around. We had Clark Atlanta handling their business. So they did what they needed to do. They got a win over Morehouse College. Very big, very important for them. I mean, obviously it's their rival. I don't know if you've never been or if you've ever been to the AUC, you know literally how close these two schools are. So the final score was 28-17. Morehouse, you know, in the first year under Terrence Mathis, they put up a solid fight. It was Clark Atlanta, as our friend likes to call them, Blark Atlanta, coming up with a 28-17 win, ending a losing streak to them. And so you had that win, but that was only part of the equation. The other part of the equation for Clark Atlanta was they needed Albany State to beat Fort Valley State. Now, if you know anything about these two, again, we're talking rivalry week, and this was a classic case of a rivalry. Two teams that are located in the state of Georgia. They've been battling at it forever. They have a great classic. You've probably heard of it. If you haven't, definitely do your research, do your Googles. They have the Fountain City Classic. I believe they had over 28,000 that were there in Columbus, Georgia for that game. And, you know, last week, Chris and I talked about it. We talked about how both defenses were very stout against the run, and that's correct. Neither team ran for over 100 yards. That's correct. Neither team gained over 100 yards on the ground. But when the dust settled, when all was said and done, Albany State found a way. Fort Valley State was not able to overcome, and they lost a 2015 decision to their rivals. A crushing loss for Fort Valley State, who, you know, again, if you looked at the beginning of the season, if you would have said, you know, who's going to be in the championship game, you would have maybe said Miles because of what they did the previous year, and you probably would have said Fort Valley State. And you know what? You would have been wrong, and you wouldn't be without being in great company, because we've been wrong about a lot of this all year long, and we will continue to talk about that going forward. Elsewhere in the SIAC, again, rivalry week. So you had Edward Waters beating Allen 33-28. And so with that Fountain City win for our guys over at Albany State, that put Clark Atlanta in the SIAC championship game. So we got a rematch of Clark Atlanta's homecoming that happened just a couple weeks back. Clark Atlanta got taken behind the woodshed. This time, though, they will be going over to Fairfield, Alabama. Let us know what you guys think. Is Clark Atlanta University, is that the SIAC storyline of the year? Is it the D2 HBCU line of the year, or is it the D2 story of the year, what they've been able to do? We will definitely love to get your opinion on that. So please do so. Again, waiting on Chris to hop in. And then lastly, the last game that we'll highlight over at the SIAC was one that had, you know, somewhat of championship implications, and that is because Miles College had already sewn up their spot. They were already there, and they were already going to host the SIAC championship. But Tuskegee University, their rival from not too far down the road, they were hoping to win and get some help. But yeah, that winning thing, it wasn't happening. 37-7 for Tuskegee. Shout out to Tuskegee. They did get their lights. Finally, the lights came on, and I don't know. And obviously, we'd be amiss if we didn't, tip our hat to the life lost over at Tuskegee University in the homecoming festivities. Really sad and sobering time for those of us who are alumni or, just supporters of HBCU or who care. Unfortunately, a young man brought his machine gun onto the campus. Yes, a machine gun. And he unleashed it. And there were 16 people that went to the hospital. 12 of them, I believe, were reported with wounded from the shooting. 5 with others. There was like trampling going on as well. And then one young man sadly lost his life. You never want to see these things happen. In HBCU world, we have, we've had, this is not just an HBCU epidemic. It's actually an epidemic of this country. And right now, the availability of guns, not only guns, but high caliber weapons, and who can get them and getting their hands on them. And unfortunately, it's becoming more and more of a reality. I remember back in 2007, I was at college when, I think it was 2007 or might have been 2006, where Virginia Tech had a shooting on their campus. And that was kind of like the first shooting that you heard about on a college campus. And unfortunately, it has crept into the HBCU world as well. Pretty much every year we hear about this type of thing. It's really hits close to home. My alma mater, Winston-Salem State University, we just celebrated homecoming as well this past weekend. And thank God that, there was nothing of that sort that happened. But, unfortunately, anytime you go out now in a crowd full of people, even unfortunate, you have to be vigilant and be aware of what's going on, even our people, even at our celebrations. And so it's a sobering reality and sobering fact in that. So we make a lot of laughs and a lot of jokes on this platform, and that's what it's about. But, our hearts and minds go out to everyone who is dealing with the fallout from that. I know Tuskegee decided that they were going to close off their campus, which is very unfortunate. HBCUs are and have always been big pillars of the community. And unfortunately, a lot of our HBCUs, or really all of our HBCUs, are going to have to take a look at how we interact with the larger community, who comes onto our campuses, what security measures they have to go to. I know, metal detectors are a commonplace thing now in many walks of life and many times in life. It's unfortunate, but, you think about things that can do things to prevent this type of loss. And so it's very sad and very sobering. And I definitely wanted to call attention to that. Again, it's just a very sad ending and a sad narrative to a great day on that campus for Tuskegee. So yeah, our thoughts and minds and hearts and prayers go out to all those who were impacted by it. But let's go on, and we will go over to the CIAA. So the CIAA is CIAA. It was week 10. So came into this. One of the things that we did know, that we knew Virginia Union was already in. So Virginia Union got the chance to, coming off of a 91-point game, mind you, a 91-point game. They were coming to take on their rivals, Virginia State University. And now last week, Chris and I sat and we talked about this game. We talked about leading into it, how Virginia State entered into a situation where they were technically 5-1 in the CIAA, and Virginia Union was technically 6-0 in the CIAA. But again, both of those teams had losses to CIAA teams, Winston-Salem State for Virginia State, and Johnson C. Smith for Virginia Union, that did not count against them. And so that was a game of two. Again, Virginia Union was already in. Virginia State was not quite in. They needed to win their game and they needed Johnson C. Smith to lose. And we will get to that for sure in a second. But yeah, Kobe, you're on point, man. That's CIAA math. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Please go ahead and hit that like button. Again, we're not on X this time, and that usually helps out our numbers. But if you guys can hit that like button and smash that, that will really help us and do a lot for us as we wait for Chris to come on. So here's what Chris and I said about that game last week.
And coming into a winning record, but unfortunately, Virginia State's done a really nice job and coming into a winning record, but unfortunately, I just don't see them getting past Virginia Union and what Union wants to do right now.
Yeah, man. I don't know, man. I kind of feel like it is Virginia Union's world, and we're just living in it. That's kind of how it feels right now. So, well, hey, you know what? Chris is not here right now to admit to take this, so I'll take this on myself. Yeah, I mean, Virginia State to me, I'll say this. I felt like Virginia Union was on a roll, and I felt like overall Virginia Union is the better team. Just given the fact that they actually did have multiple wins. Wait a minute. Did they have multiple wins against winning school? No, they actually didn't have multiple wins. But I just felt like Virginia Union, because they've already been to the playoffs, because they were previous. Hey, here we go. Chris, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I'm good. Yeah, we were just we're eating our crow from as Chris gets back in. As Chris gets back in, of course, he's been on the road. And so I think we've got him back in the Chris Mobile. But anyway, Virginia Union just looked like to be a stronger team. But hey, you know what? Virginia State came out. Their passing game was on point, and they really showed that, hey, yeah, they might not have beaten the team with the winning record before. Yeah, they feasted on a bottom tier old CIAA North. We'll look at the standings in a second, and you'll see why I say that. They lost to not only Johnson C. Smith, they also lost to Winston-Salem State, two teams in the South. But, hey, they did what they had to do. They beat the teams that they had to beat, and they got there. And so, it is Virginia State and Virginia Union. Again, this is what the SIDs and coaches picked back in August. They predicted Virginia State to finish first, which I guess technically they did, because they beat Virginia Union, and both teams finished with a technically 6-1 record. I guess they are the regular season champions. That's a thing now, because there are no divisions. They are the regular season champion. But they had to do a lot of proving to a lot of people, and it was on their home field, so they did take care of it. And so we'll talk a little bit later about the championship game, which obviously is going to be something that is also going to be in Virginia, but it's not going to be anywhere near the Richmond corridor, where both of these folks call home, Henrico County, and the such. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Please go ahead and hit that like button, share this out to folks if you can. And so we there was another game. That Chris and I talked about last week in the CIAA. This was the other part of the equation. So Virginia Union handled their business. And if not for what happened in Salisbury, North Carolina, that would have just been a nice end to the season for them, beating their rival on a win. However, that was not to be the case. So Chris and I, because Johnson C. Smith, for all of this year, Johnson C. Smith had been battling with Clark Atlanta to be the darling story of D2 HBCU football. This is the same Johnson C. Smith that had won 7 games last year, and people thought that they might become a contender. But for a large part of the season this year, Johnson C. Smith has looked as if it's the best team in the CIAA, defeating the teams that were immediately underneath them. And of course, the teams that were lower than that, they took care of business against them as well. But 2 weeks ago, after they got that Winston-Salem State monkey off their back, or Winston-Salem State ram off their back, after they popped confetti guns in Bowman Gray Stadium, after they, trotted back to Charlotte with an 8-0 record, they went home to Fayetteville State, a wounded Fayetteville State, a busted Bronco Fayetteville State, if you will, and they laid an absolute egg. I mean, an absolute egg, like technically a goose egg, a 0. They didn't score anything at all. They just completely got shut out. It was like they just went back to 1891, where Johnson C. Smith don't even know how to play football. But they had a game coming up. They had a chance to still control their destiny. All they needed to do was beat Livingstone College. And I say all respectfully. All they needed to do was beat Livingstone. Livingstone came into the game with a 5-4 record. They had some tough losses, some okay wins. They were coming off of a loss to Shaw, where they let the lead slip away from them. And here's what Chris and I had to say at that point. Look up,
I don't know if maybe.
All right, so we got. Here we go. There we go, Chris. How you doing, man?
Hello. Oh,
Appreciate
what a
you.
week.
Appreciate you for joining in, man. We appreciate you for joining in. Yeah, man. I was just telling everybody, man. It has been just kind of give us your tell everybody how you're doing and give us your debrief of the SIAC, and then we'll pick back up after that. So talk to us. So talk to us about what you saw there just in week 10 and everything like that.
Well, I would just say that when you're looking at what happened with Fort Valley and Albany, had the easiest path to get to the championship game for Fort Valley, and poof, is gone. They just didn't make it happen. And then on top of that, Clark Atlanta almost gave the game away too. I mean, David Wright throwing for 5 interceptions. It's like, man, this is crazy. This is nuts. It's like, who wanted to go? I mean, Miles, they blasted Tuskegee away. We kind of knew that was going to happen. So it's like, who wants to face Miles? Who wants to face Miles? And now we got Clark, who's in the game to face them. And I don't know. It just feels like makes sense, given the dream season that Clark has been having, having been winless, and now they're getting to the championship game. So that feels great, but here we've got a rematch, and, can Clark clean some things up in order to take home the title? I don't know. I mean, that Miles defense is pretty good. But yeah, the
We'll
SIAC,
get to that.
yeah, the SIAC, the wild, wonderful world of the SIAC. So
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, and obviously the CIAA joined in the chaos business this week. So we talked a little bit about V State, V Union. We'll talk about them again because hey, they're gonna play again. But let's also talk about another game because we're kind of holding ourselves accountable a little bit for some of these takes, man. These takes last week, they kind of did their thing. So let's see. Yeah, let's listen. Let's look back at ourselves last week.
I don't expect Livingstone, JCSU to drop this game. There's just too much riding on it at this point. It's just too much.
You're not expecting JCSU to JCSU, huh?
No, but you know how this goes. I know Livingstone fans out there watching, so they love to make me eat.
Yes, Chris. Oh man, yeah.
Eat it.
Yes,
Crow.
yes. Eat your blueberry porridge today, Chris. Yeah, I mean, look, man. Really, all you got to do. This kind of sums up not only this game, Chris, right here, but this sums up Johnson C. Smith's season right here. This. I mean, one. If I had to do one right here. Yeah, Chris. I think that play kind of sums it up, man. I mean, who would have thought sitting here 2 weeks ago, again after the confetti bombs, after the brick by bricks, the motivational speeches and all of this stuff, Johnson C. Smith would score a total of 10 points in 8 quarters. That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what has sort of happened here. I know you're playing two squads in a row that, really have it out for you. But at the same time, it's like you have to deliver. You are now the hunted and not the hunter. And you have to deliver, and you miss on so many occasions. And to me, this is all the offense right now. It's like, Darius Ocean went through the season until he got to Winston-Salem State. He had thrown like 1 interception. That was like the Virginia State game. And then after that, he just kind of sort of turned into a turnover machine. And it's like, man, like you got the backs, you've got the offensive line, but maybe it's injuries that we're not seeing or something. JCSU is just sort of just went flat. And that's not what you want to see from who is your leading contender to go to the playoffs. They have a great resume. They're able to sort of lean into that resume quite a bit and have some built-in advantage. But Steven, you know who they're gonna play in the first round, right?
I don't, but you're gonna tell me.
Your second favorite PWI.
Ooh, not the Dub.
Yes, the Dub. The Dub's coming again.
The Dub. Okay.
The only way that doesn't happen.
We're gonna get to playoffs. We're gonna get to playoffs soon. We're gonna get to playoffs soon. I know you're ready to go. We're gonna get there soon.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
We're gonna get there soon. So yeah, before we get to that, there's another team that coming into last week was not in the championship game, but there were the playoff. There were the playoff in the playoff rankings, and that would be Winston-Salem State. So we talked about this game last week, Chris. We talked about this game last week. Let's refresh everybody's memories. All right.
The radio broadcast or what, but it just seems like when misfortune strikes, it seems to tilt their way. And so I don't see a scenario right. I just don't where where Winston State doesn't shoot themselves in the foot. I just don't see it. Fayetteville State is going to make this a very interesting game. Do not let them get to be a close game because they're known. They tried it against Shaw where they almost tied the game on a field goal, but they're known to have that last second field goal. They've done.
Chris, man, we'll talk about the game, but we'll show everybody because this is a great atmosphere. This is a great way to end the season. We'll show everybody. We'll come back with a little bit of with a little theater. Shout out to our guy Josh Williams, who does great work for us at HBCU Game Day for dropping these highlights, these custom highlights. Here we go.
Ball game here in 1945. Pass is complete, and on his feet, still going, and this could be all the way.
It could. Let's see if Flynn can catch him, but no, that's going to be a 90-some-odd yard play touchdown on just a swing pass out of the backfield.
That's right, Caden Davis.
Caden Davis is in the game.
For the touchdown.
I'm not exactly sure why they were just running toward the pile.
Lead back to pass.
Got him in.
Open man in the end zone.
Touchdown.
Touchdown, Rams. A Flow Automotive touchdown.
Finally, Dalen puts one on the money. Here's the snap. Up the middle to Asa.
Asa, is he in? Yes, Asa Barnes in for the Flow Automotive touchdown. Finally, the Rams regained the lead, 23-21.
They give it to Asa.
Barnes.
Dalen Lee on the read.
In for the touchdown.
Dropped his shoulder and trucked the defender to go into the end zone on the read option. Here comes the pressure. Owens over the middle, and they're going to score. They're going to score.
Strayhorn takes it in for the touchdown.
That man has gone crazy all day.
Did he push that one? No good.
It's no good.
No good. He pushed that one. So now.
Dalen looking to
back to pass.
And it's
complete.
In the end zone. Yes! Touchdown. A
Flow Automotive touchdown as it.
Yeah, man. What a game, man. 12,000 reported there, largest crowd since homecoming 2017 against Shaw. WSSU gets the win, but finally gets the FSU Bronco off its back for the first win over Fayetteville State since 2019. But Chris, and in the season 7-3. But Chris, just talk about the end of the game and just talk about that game, your vantage point from watching it, and finally seeing WSSU slay the infamous Fayetteville State Dragon.
Well, when going into this game, when you played that clip from last week, it just felt like, Fayetteville State had something that seemed to be clicking. Like that's been kind of sort of their deal, where they've been kind of up and down, but when they need to score, they find ways to score, and that happened on Saturday. I think what you really saw from Winston-Salem State is a way to be resilient in those games. Last year they would lose those games, and I think the other thing is that you're always playing these really close games. They blew out Bluefield, and they had a comfortable margin against Blue State, and Shaw. But all these other games, they were close games, they were overtime games, and you just kind of wonder, man, is your luck going to run out at some point? And it kind of did, those two losses, but that's just living on the edge, and that doesn't feel very comfortable. And here you going again, two overtimes this time, just like we always see with Fayetteville State. They kick a field goal, but it was just a tie this time, not to win the game, and so it was just too close for comfort. Did they win? Yeah, but it's just too close for comfort.
Yeah, they really make it easy. They really make it easy for the faithful. But appreciate everybody for hopping on for sure. Let's see, and as we are looking, definitely want to make sure that we definitely we do have some news for folks. So we want to kind of touch on that. So Isaiah Freeman, the quarterback over at Lincoln University. He CIAA Offensive Player of the Year last year. Probably not going to repeat as Offensive Player of the Year this year, but a solid quarterback. He has looks like he is hitting that transfer portal. How big of a loss is this for Lincoln and for the CIAA potentially, Chris? I mean, he could go to somewhere else in the CIAA, but just talk about the loss of a guy like him.
Yeah. So Isaiah Freeman kind of stormed onto the scene last year and, injected a lot of life into that Lincoln offense. It was a very, very dynamic quarterback. He could run, he was dual threat, can pass when he had time. And I think the difference is a combination of when he has that protection, he's been able to do a lot of things with his arm. And Lincoln, they won 4 games last year, and it was like, man, Lincoln might be sneaky good going into this year. And
Might
they
be
did
climbing out of
lose.
the gutter. Might be climbing out of the gutter.
And they had they lost some pieces to graduation, particularly defense, particularly in the secondary, but it's like, man, we might have something. And remember, they had Malachi as well, and at wide receiver. And so, but I believe he got hurt throughout this season, and their other wide receivers are sort of stepped up, but they never really got going. They're not at the bottom of the conference. They're close, but they're not there. But it was such a regression. And from what we saw last year, that it's like, where do you really go from here? And so it just that was disappointment. I was expecting a lot of good things out of them. I think I had them 7 in my preseason pick. And I don't think they're gonna get there. So yeah, it just wasn't great to lose somebody like that. That's a blow. But certainly a dynamic player, certainly wish him the best. Really enjoyed the conversations I certainly had with him over the 2 seasons, online and in person, and we'll see where he goes. He might go. I know somebody wanted him to go to Morgan. He might end up at some.
Do you really want to go to Morgan State right now? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the offense is a little challenged over there. Now, defense is a whole different story, but offense, So, I mean, he might end up at these coaches watch. They see what's going on, so somebody's going to try to lure him over. So somebody's gonna get him. Somebody's gonna get him.
Interesting. Okay, guys, and we will take a look now at the standings in the CIAA and the SIAC. We'll start over with the SIAC. All right, so let me move this comment down. Let's see. Yeah, Kobe. We know. All right. All right. So we got Miles sitting up there, Sterling 7-0 record in conference play, 8-2 overall. We've got Clark Atlanta 7-2-1 with the rare tie. And then we got Fort Valley State and Albany State, who just kind of cancel each other out. They're 6-2, 6-2, 6-4, 6-4 overall. And then after that, Chris, you get a lot of mid here at best. You got Tuskegee. Yeah, so Tuskegee sitting at 5-5. You got Savannah State sitting at 5-5 as well. You've got Kentucky State. Kentucky, you got a trio of 4-6 teams. Kentucky State, who took the L to Virginia Union. Benedict, who took the L to Virginia State. And then you've got Lane sitting there 4-6. Edward Waters, 3-7 overall, 3-5 in the conference. And then you have Morehouse, 1-9 overall, Allen, 2-8, and then Central State, 1-9. Chris, the SIAC, what do you make of it? Maybe we'll do grades next week, but what do you make of what we saw in the SIAC? A bit of a regression from last year, you'd say?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Kind of expected Fort Valley to contend. They did for a while, but they sort of fell apart. Albany had a really slow start. The SIAC in general can't forget that they got swept. By the CIAA.
I'm sorry.
So, there were some refreshing surprises though. So think about like Savannah State, right? They were down last year, and they made some progress. And so that was very, very refreshing in particular. And then Kentucky State, we kind of wrote them off early, and they managed to salvage a somewhat respectable season. So there are some bright spots in there. More than just Miles and more than just Clark Atlanta, but overall, the conference got a lot of work to do in the off season.
Yeah. Interesting question by Mr. Groucho here. He says, can the middle-ranked SIAC programs beat the middle-ranked CIAA? Well, let's see.
We already saw that. Albany and Shaw.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Livingstone. We already seen that. Livingstone, middle of the road.
Well, I mean, they beat Allen, who is at the bottom of the SIAC. Johnson C. Smith beat Morehouse, who's at the bottom of the SIAC.
Virginia State and Benedict, but
middle.
Virginia State is.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that depends on whether or not you see Virginia State as the middle of the CIAA. Technically. There's that. We will get to that in just a second. Let's see. So, asking at this point, at this point, yes, still, yes. Maybe play Bluefield State. Maybe play Lincoln. Maybe see if you can get Lincoln down there. Let's see. We will go over to the CIAA. I gave you a peek at it already. This is how things play out. So Bluefield State straight at the bottom, 0-7 in CIAA play, 1-9 overall. They did get a win, so a second consecutive single win season for them. Elizabeth City State took a big step back, 3-7. So they were competitive in some games. Lincoln, they were moonwalking back, 2-8 overall, 2-5 in the CIAA. Bowie State, woo buddy. The last time we saw this low for Bowie State, man, this might have been the first Obama administration. So 3-4, 4-6 overall. They beat up on the underbelly of the CIAA North and managed to catch Livingstone lacking in Bowie for a day, but not nearly where they want to be. Bowie State and Fayetteville State, seeing both those teams right there, it's a brand new day. And then things start to look up as the further you go south. You got Shaw and Livingstone both finishing at 6-4, 4-3 overall. 4-3 in the conference. I don't know how they have Livingstone over Shaw when Shaw beat Livingstone, but okay. Again, technically. CIAA math, you got Winston-Salem State finishing 7-3 overall. Technically 5-2 in the conference. You got Johnson C. Smith 8-2 overall. 5-2 in the conference. I'm sorry, that is actually accurate. They are 5-2 in the conference. Then you got Virginia Union, technically 6-1 in the conference,
right?
And you got Virginia State, technically at 6-1 in the conference. So you look at that, Chris. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So over half the league had winning records, which, you know, hey, that can happen when you actually win at a conference games. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
You know, just talk about this year for the CIAA overall before we get into championship scenarios, because this is obviously going to play into our discussion about the playoffs.
This is probably like the best year the conference has had since like 2017, 18, maybe. So you had those years where like Virginia State, Bowie State both got into the playoffs. You had 2014 where Winston should have got into the playoffs. You had 2012 that had double 2 teams get into the playoffs. You had 2010 where 3 teams were in discussion for the playoffs. This year you got 4. And that's a testament to what each of them have been able to do during the season. But I even look at Shaw and Livingstone and what they were able to do this year as really sort of standouts. You know, yeah, Fayetteville State, you know, 4 and 5, but they did beat Pembroke. That does matter for something, and they should not have scheduled Valdosta State. I don't know why they did that. I did not like that game from the jump. It was just you could tell they were going to be overmatched, and they were. They didn't score. But overall, I say, you know, it was definitely a good season. I even like the way Elizabeth City scheduled. Right, they scheduled Chowan. That's a rivalry game, and Erskine, and they picked up 2 wins there. So they certainly made a step forward as well. I thought it was a great year, a great regular season for the conference. Absolutely.
Okay, and then
one of the best I've seen in a while.
Right, and then we'll go to playoffs. So, and then we'll go to playoffs. Technically, I guess technically. Yeah, but you know, here we go. Yeah, so we'll flip over to the playoffs, and so right now the regional rankings came out recently. We had some shaking up. I believe Miles was 6. Johnson C. Smith fell, fumbled the bag. El Fumbela. And found their way in number 7 into the 7 slot. You got Virginia Union sitting down there at where is it, 8 or 9, Chris?
Virginia Union's at 9.
Virginia Union's at 9, and then Winston-Salem State sitting down there at number 10. Hoping the stars align for them. You know, we will definitely see. I guess, Chris, what's the best case scenario, right? All right, let's start at the SIAC. So obviously, we talked about it last week. Miles is pretty much the only hope. Even a win over Miles probably not going to be enough to get Clark Atlanta in there, you wouldn't think, with them being where they are right now. Chris, is that correct?
Oh, Clark?
Yeah.
Get Clark in? No, they're too far down. No, the problem right now is if Miles doesn't win, there's a chance that they can get shut out. I mean, because remember, so the way that the criteria works is that they've already played each other. So if Clark wins, that will cancel out a win that Miles had against him earlier in the season. And with the resume kind of already, you know, somewhat weak, it's really leaning hard into them having one loss. And if they somehow, you know, lose that win against Clark, you know, there's CIAA teams waiting to take their spot.
And that's a great point. So let's flip this over to the CIAA. One thing you notice, one of the participants in the CIAA championship game is not in that 10. Virginia State, despite being technically 6-1 in the CIAA, they, Chris, they are on the outside looking in. Meanwhile, you've got Winston-Salem State and Johnson C. Smith, and obviously Johnson C. Smith in a much more better situation, who are on the outside looking into the CIAA championship game, but both of them are in front of Virginia State right now in the playoffs. Chris, I don't know. It seems like, and maybe you educate me. Say Clark Atlanta wins. Say they complete the dream season and walk away with the SIAC championship, thereby probably eliminating Miles. And say Virginia Union gets its face back, remembers how, because it's the same team a week before that's going for 2 up 89-0. They can't beat a team that hasn't beaten a winning team all year. And anyway, at any rate, if they win their game against Virginia State, what we've talked about it already, there is the possibility of them sending VUU up to Super Region 1. Is there any chance, Chris, that we get? What's the chance that we get 0, 1, 2, or 3 CIAA championships
into the playoffs?
Sir, wait a minute. See, you can't be wrong and loud. You can't beat wrong and loud. They took a loss in real time. That's why Winston-Salem State's in the playoffs race and Virginia State's not. But no, sorry, do your research, buddy. All right, go ahead.
In the playoffs?
Zero. What's the chance we get 0 playoffs teams?
Oh, no chance. They're gonna get somebody in the playoffs. You know why? Because it's important to remember that there's this rule called earned access. So if you don't have anybody in the top 7, your conference doesn't have anybody in the top 7, but they're in 8 or 9, they will take the 7th spot. So where JCSU sits at 7 and they're not playing a game, they really can't do any harm. The teams that are still playing on their schedule right now, Virginia State, Virginia Union, they've already beaten both of them. Mm-hmm. So at minimum, you would think that they're going to get in. At minimum. The conference would really, not the conference, the playoff committee would really have to say, you know what, we understand that JCSU beat both VU and VSU, but they really would have to override one of the criteria, which is head to head, in order to put someone else in the CIAA ahead of them that is playoff worthy. So it doesn't seem like they are willing to do that based on what we've seen. It's certainly possible, but yeah, at this point, you would think that at least one is going to get in, and that one is going to be Johnson C. Smith.
Okay. Virginia Union wins. What are the chances Virginia Union gets in and joins Johnson C. Smith?
I like Virginia Union's chance to get in if they can beat Virginia State. Now, the reason why I say that is because, it's going to they're going to need some help. The reason why I say 50-50 is because they're going to need some help. And they're going to need some help by West Florida, who's in the 8th slot, losing to Valdosta. So if you're a VUU fan, you're definitely a Valdosta fan as well this weekend. And you need likely Carson Newman to lose. Carson Newman is got one loss. That one loss is not to Wingate, who they play in the SAC, the South Atlantic Championship game. They beat Wingate earlier this season. Wingate getting revenge on them will cancel out that win for them and put them down to 2 losses where they're fighting with everybody else. And to also kind of sort of highlight, so I had to go pull up some numbers from Ink Block Sports. Mm-hmm. So we're now in the quantitative segment of today's show. So Carson Newman right now has a strength of schedule of 507, so barely above 500, right? And they're 8-1. So they don't get a change in strength of schedule from playing Wingate a second time. but they're being, you're kind of leaning on the fact that they've already beaten Wingate one time, and have to do it again to really feel comfortable about staying in the playoffs at this point. You go down and you look at Virginia Union, their strength of schedule a little better, 5-10. And again, that doesn't really change by playing VSU twice. There's also this item called the performance indicator. They're not really far behind Carson Newman either. So that also looks good. And remember, like VU was up relatively high in the standings when JCSU was undefeated. So it's not like they haven't been in the top 7, throughout these discussions. But they have got to win and hope Carson Newman loses to feel really good about their chances of getting 2 in.
And since we're here, Chris,
come on now.
Is there a chance?
Is there a chance of getting 3 in? So basically, that third one being Winston-Salem State. So Winston-Salem State's in a really, huh?
You could call him. I mean, just throw a team out there. You might as well.
Well, Winston-Salem State is the most interesting of the 4 teams. Why? Because their strength of schedule is actually better. Of the 4 CIAA teams, their strength of schedule is better, 0.556. Not many teams in Super Region 2 that have a strength of schedule better than what Winston-Salem State does. Their performance indicator also is pretty good, 26.2. It's actually, and this is where, like, how did Lenore Ryan jump so high? It's actually,
they're using the CIAA math. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's actually better than Lenore Ryan's strength of schedule and performance indicator. Slightly better. Where's Winston-Salem State sort of getting hurt in all this? It's really those losses to JCSU and the losses to Virginia Union. That's where they're getting hurt. But if you have a scenario where 3 teams lose, that's Carson Newman, West Florida, and the HBCU Brethren and Miles would have to lose as well in order for the CIAA to take 3 teams into this deal. So, because like Lenore Ryan, you would want them to lose. They're not losing. They're playing like Anderson. They're like 3-7, I think. They're not losing to Anderson. Like, one of those teams is like the NAIA team. They're not. Anderson's their first season in South Atlantic play. The likelihood of that happening is just so minimal. You can kind of assume that, yeah, they're going to have a strength schedule hit. Is it going to be enough? It's kind of hard to tell, but I like Lenore Ryan's chances of getting in a little better than Carson Newman's. I don't think Carson Newman will beat Wingate. So I'm aiming for 2, not trying to be greedy. If 3 gets in, that would be awesome.
Saying there's a chance. No.
But let me say this though. If Winston-Salem State gets to the playoffs, I don't want to hear nothing y'all got to say about Massey for the rest of the year, rest of the school year. I won't hear nothing about Massey. Say good things. I'm gonna say good things. Y'all been putting some respect on Massey's name.
Nah, I mean, look, I'm gonna say it here. I'm I'm pretty, I'm pretty hard on them because it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what I say, no matter what. If Winston-Salem State stinks, then people are just gonna give me hell about it all the time. So shout out to those guys, though. I will give whether they get in the playoffs or not. I feel like they were winning pretty much every game except for the Virginia Union game. They won 7 out of 3. I said 6-4 was possible. I thought they would be better this year. I didn't know if how much it would show up in the win column, but they definitely overperformed, I would say, and it does. Last Saturday, it does feel like WSSU football might be close to being back. So we will. I'll give them that much, and yeah. So shout out to them.
I just want to mention, Coach's poll had Winston-Salem State 7. I had them 5th in my preseason poll, and they're gonna, finish.
Well, they picked 6th. Then they did have to play the top. They did have to play the top. They played the top 8 in the conference. That counted for them. And if you add it, they did actually play Bluefield State too, which they didn't get a chance to count that as a win. So now good stuff for them. Well, hey man, look, Kobe, it's been fun. It's been
real.
But man. So let's talk about what we do have on the table right now, and that is the championship games. So we got first off over in the SIAC in Fairfield, Alabama. We have Clark Atlanta. Who would have thought that last year in the SIAC championship game against Miles College? Chris, can the fairy tale have a happy ending for the Pyru Panthers, Clark Atlanta,
right?
Team Rat Poison.
Yep.
Team Rat Poison. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, it's very possible. That they learn from their mistakes, and they go in and they steal a win on the road. The same concerns that we have about Clark really haven't gone anywhere. When you're playing down, I know it's a rivalry game against Morehouse, but when you're kind of sort of like playing down to them, that's not a good sign. You want them to sort of come out swinging, and which gives me Virginia State vibes, because that's kind of what happened like this past week. Like, Virginia State kind of been playing down the competition, then all of a sudden they're playing to the competition, and they put something on VUU. In this case, it just feels like, can Clark Atlanta come out and play to the competition and rise to the occasion, particularly when their defense isn't doing all that hot. That's the question. So they know what it's going to take now. They know that Miles, where they at. Can they do it? I think they can do it. Will they do it? I hope that they do it. I hope Clark wins. Sorry, Miles. I hope they do. Am I starting David Wright on my fantasy team this week? I am not. I am not. But I think that they can do it. Yeah. That's right.
Let's go. CAU. All right. So, this should be a great game. Again, Sam Shade inherited that Miles program after the yeoman's work that AD Ruffin, that's now over at Tuskegee, did. And in year 3, he got him in a championship game. Kind of a similar trajectory to Maurice Flowers over at John C. Smith, but they're in the championship game. Let's see. And then over with the over at in the CIAA, let's hear from Dr. Alvin Parker, because his team went from scoring 91 points. Again, talking about the depth of the width and the depth of the difference in the old CIAA North this season. You go from playing a Bluefield State team you scored 91 against them. You got a Virginia State team that came in and, yes, check the record. They had not beaten a winning team all year long until Saturday, and it's a rival. You're at their place, and here's what we got here. Here's what Dr. Parker had to say.
Before the Johnson C. Smith Award became final. How cool is this rivalry, for this rivalry to now be on this stage, where one against the championship and, more than likely gets a bid to the tournament?
I don't think it get any bigger than this. I think when it was kind of put together that the CIAA would go to this format, you know, it was something that was pretty interesting that something like this had a chance of happening. And people kind of thought that back in July when you know, again, the new format was kind of put out there that you can get, you know, 2 Virginia teams in there or 2 traditional North teams in there or 2 traditional South teams in the game. You know, it was always kind of like, oh, okay, this would be interesting, you know, for something like this to happen. But to get it against your rival, you know, I've never in my career played against a team back-to-back weeks. So that's something that's going to be definitely different. But getting to do it in this fashion, I think something that's good. And I think, you know, you win your games and everything fall in the right position. You know, and I think in the preseason they had it kind of picked, you know, a Virginia Union and a Virginia State championship set up. They had that picked in the preseason. So I guess some other people kind of thought about it, but as coaches, we really don't look that far. You know, but to kind of have it come into fruition, it's like, you know, it's a wow. You know, and to get to play your rivals 2 weeks back to back is something that's pretty daggone special.
A lot of love for Coach. I'll be at the game on Saturday, man. But when he said win your games, man, that kind of stung a little bit. Chris. You on that CIAA math, Jacoby? Yeah, we know who you riding with. We don't. Yeah. They're in there. We gonna see, man. We gonna see. Get out of here, man.
I just want to say that this year makes you feel like, man, unless you got a doctorate, you cannot coach in this game as a head coach.
Well, there's that. We do have Dr. Alvin Parker and Dr. Henry Frazier, who will be. We will have the first ever All Virginia CIAA championship game. All CIAA championship game. The last game that will be played in Virginia for the foreseeable future is that moving back to Durham, which is crazy. Like, I don't think folks realize the irony that even though these 2 teams are both in Virginia, it'll be a shorter trip next year to Durham than it is to Salem, because that's kind of how far it is away from them over there on the eastern part of Virginia. You know, we've made all the jokes and the thoughts about technicalities and things while they're there. But obviously, both programs, you know, definitely looking forward to this game. Chris, what's your feeling, and what did we see last week that you don't think we'll see this week, maybe?
Well, you know, Virginia Union was already going to go into the championship game. Like, it was already set there. What, you know, the question is whether it be the number 1 seed or number 2 seed, but they are already set. And so I just kind of wondered, you know, with VUU, when it's time to really make adjustments, that coaching staff is really good about doing that. And I think they try to adjust, but maybe they've left something on the table that we haven't seen yet, in order to keep some tricks in the bag for circumstances like this. That's what I'm interested in seeing big time. What can we expect different this time around than what we just witnessed last Saturday? Well, somehow Virginia Union has got to get the ball into Jada Byers' hands. And, you know, maybe it's more in the pass game or swing passes or something like that, because, you know, VUU, there's a blueprint to beat them. And teams have been deploying that, attempting to do that. And we kind of saw that with JCSU. We saw that with VSU. It's to stop the run and force Mark Wright to pass, and they did that. And VUU, there were opportunities where they just didn't catch the ball, and they could have extended drives. And that defense gave up some pretty big third downs either. I would think that they're not going to do that this time too, but you know, VSU has definitely got a lot of weapons. And you would think that they're going to take away some of the long pass plays this time. The Panthers would. So, will they adjust? You know, yeah, I would expect to do so. But I think will it be enough is a question, especially if they can't get that run game going 2 weekends in a row.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just the predictions came out. There were 1 and 2 VSU and VUU. Then September came along. Both teams took L's that technically don't count, and but they steadied themselves. The Virginia State took an L that did count to Johnson C. Smith, but they were able to again. The cure for what ails them came in the form of Bluefield State, Elizabeth City State, Lincoln University, and Bowie State University. And they found their way to the championship game last year. They felt like they should have been there. And they just kind of laid multiple eggs on the field at Hovey Field last year. But this year it was over at Ettrick, and they ended up getting the win. Was Virginia Union playing with the full house? You don't know. But now they're playing for a championship, looking to go back-to-back CIAA titles for, I believe, the first time since a long time. So a lot to play for them this week.
VSU? You talking about VSU?
VUU. I don't remember the last time they repeated. They won in 2001, took a long hiatus, and then last year they were able to win. If you're talking about Virginia State, you're talking about a program that won back in 2017 under Reggie Barlow. They won back in 2014 under Latrell Scott, and now they have, after taking a back seat to Bowie State for a number of years, Bowie State's fallen off, and they've stepped up. And here they are in the playoffs. So, no, they're not in the playoffs, but they are in the championship game. So it should be a great game. Looking forward to going up to Salem and checking it out. But look, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Please, guys, before you leave, make sure you hit that like button, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube. Just throwing them all out there. We're not even on Twitter today. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. I appreciate Chris for hopping on. And do you have a score prediction, or you're not gonna give me one? Or will you be at the game? Will you be at the game, Chris?
I will be at the game. I will be at the game.
Okay. So we'll have fun at the game, and if it's not too frigid, maybe we'll even pop up live on you for a second. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much, and make sure you guys go out and support the championship games if you can. And we'll see next week to talk about playoffs, and we'll give out grades and superlatives for the season. We thought about doing it tonight, but we'll hold off on that, and we'll make it when it all falls down. So I appreciate all you guys for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. It's SJG D2 HBCU football.
Sleep on Livingstone if you want to, and they can really punish you for it.
Fayetteville State, they're never sexy, but they won.
Sometimes we have to eat our crow, and I got to eat my crow this week, okay?
Doom alert. Yeah, we're back at Heartbreak Hotel, and we're checking back in.